Open it up and see. So pictures first like usual. Final exam, that's 204. Final exam for you guys right there. First, there's 100 questions on this final. There's 100 questions on the final.
All multiple choice.
All multiple choice. Let me show you pictures first, then we'll go through it. Oh, no pictures. Wow, interesting. Okay, let me tell you the next thing next. I'm going to tell you how many blood group questions I have in here. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8, 9, 10, 11. There are 10 or 11, depending on how you classify these. There are 10 or 11 questions on ABO and RH blood grouping. And they are not an overview. They are not an overview. It means they're detailed. It means you have to know who you can transfuse what unit of blood into and who can receive what unit of blood. So we can do that whole thing again today if you guys want to. It'll be up to you guys. ABO and RH. If you guys are going to be healthcare workers, it's extremely important you understand blood transfusion. So ABO and RH, 10 or 11 questions, all right? Now let me just start from the beginning and tell you concepts. All right, I would reread chapter 1 if I was you. Here's what I would know from it. I would know the hierarchy of life. You guys remember what I mean by hierarchy of life? Atom, molecule, macromolecule, organelle, cells, tissues, organs, organ systems, organism. That's it. I would know that. I would conceptually understand the structure-function relationship between anatomy and physiology. That doesn't mean you have to list 50 examples, but obviously you need to conceptually understand that there's a structure-function relationship. Like, why is a neuron so long? And you're going to say, well, because it has to send a signal way down from your toe to your spinal cord. Exactly right. There's a structure-function relationship in anatomy and physiology. By the way, what's part of anatomy and physiology is structure?
Anatomy.
And then function is physiology. Okay? Then, let me tell you what I've done. 5 through... No, let me tell you what I've done for a few questions. I've listed an organ system and I asked you its function. So I would know all 11 systems in an overview of its function. So, because you don't know which ones I asked you, I'm not going to tell you. So, all 11 organ systems in just an overview of its function. Okay? Here's a very important question, not just for this test, but because I hope you walk away from this class with this. What's the central principle of physiology? Say it, if you can say it in one word, say it in one word. Homeostasis. You have warmed my heart. I was going to go home and kick the dog, but no, I'm not.
What kind of dog?
It's a little... What kind of dog is Gavin have?
Border
It's actually not
collie.
my dog, so I don't care. I was going to kick someone else. So, yes, the central principle of phys is homeostasis. Okay, you have to know negative feedback. I'll tell you if I see positive feedback in here, but you definitely have to know negative feedback. Okay, 9, 10, and 11 are directional terms. proximal, distal, medial, lateral, superior, inferior, anterior, posterior. So that's kind of anatomy, but I would go back to that in chapter 1 and understand these directional terms. At this point, I hope that's just nothing to you. I hope that you say, I'm not even looking at that, I know that. I mean, you've studied so many anatomical features that use those terms to describe them. Medial, epicondyle, lateral, etc. You should know them by now. So directional terms. Okay, a little bit of chemistry in here. I guess the biggest thing with the chemistry is what makes an element unique, the number of protons. What do we call the number of protons? Atomic number. How do you get the atomic mass?
Protons plus neutrons.
Protons plus neutrons. So if the protons make an element unique, like carbon always has 6 protons. If it has 6 protons, it is carbon. I obviously can't change the number of protons for a given element. Well, there are also changes to another element. Can I change the number of neutrons?
Yes.
What are they called?
Isotopes.
Good. That's some chemistry for you. You have to know what bonds are. Atomic bonds are... What makes up an atomic bond, by the way?
Charges between protons and electrons. Or electrons to electrons from...
So what I'm really asking you is, when you have this line right here, what does it represent? And the answer is electrons. It actually represents 2 electrons. Right? So I do ask you about these bonds. And you have to know the difference between ionic bonds and covalent bonds. Oh, who's in chemistry right now? One. You two are going to argue that question. I don't care, I'm leaving it. You'll be wrong, I'll be right. Alright. Okay, because I heard one of you mention this earlier, I forget who said it. Absolutely make sure you understand the pH scale. A low pH is acidic and a high pH is basic. Don't get that switched around. Okay, I have a question for you. Who has more protons? A solution of pH of 4 or a solution of pH of 3?
The 3 would, wouldn't it?
3. You want to say 4? Who has more protons? A solution of a pH of 4 or a solution with a pH of 3? Who has more protons? H pluses. Who has more H pluses? 3.
Otherwise it's always negative.
But I'm only asking you the H plus, the proton. Can't do what Sam did to me. You can't force a disease on me. Okay? So I'm saying to you, who has more H pluses? I call them protons. You guys understand why I explained it to you. Who has more protons? A solution with a pH of 4 or a solution with a pH of 3? Well, a solution with a pH of 3 is more acidic, which by definition means it has more H pluses. So the answer is a pH of 3 has more protons. Here's the second part of that question. How many more protons does the pH 3 have? Double, triple, quadruple? 10 times. When you change a pH number, you are changing the number of protons tenfold.
So if it was 3 to 5, it would be
100-fold.
100.
You got it. Exactly. Pretty simple, right?
Right.
That's a log-based example.
Okay, you have to know the monomers which make up which polymers. What are the monomers of proteins?
Amino acids.
Amino acids. What are the monomers of carbohydrates?
No.
Saccharides? Monosaccharides. Quit making me mix it up. Monosaccharides. What are the monomers of nucleic acids?
Purines.
Yeah, the purines and pyrimidines are examples. They are called
Oh.
nucleotides. nucleotides. Okay, number 22 says this. Match the organelle with the correct description. You gotta go back and look at your organelles. Anyone need me to slow down, or everyone's still good? Okay, make sure you understand osmosis and diffusion. Going from a high concentration to a low concentration. Make sure you understand water always travels from a hypotonic environment into a hypertonic environment. Water always goes from hypo to hyper. Another way of saying that is water follows salt. Okay, I'm going to read a question to you, and I'm going to read part of a question to you and see what it says to you. See what you can infer from the question. The process by which blank moves down their concentration gradient, blah, blah, blah. The process by which something moves down its concentration gradient. What kind of transport is it? Active or passive? How do you know it's passive?
Gradient.
It's going down its gradient. Active transport pumps it against its gradient. So now that you know it's passive transport, you know it's diffusion, simple diffusion, or facilitated diffusion. You know it's diffusion. So see, just by reading this, you already can answer the question in a great way just by looking at what I'm saying. Okay, there is a mitosis question in here. Make sure you understand that mitosis does not change the ploidy. You guys know what I mean by ploidy?
Number of rows.
How do you spell ploidy?
Ploidy. So, I have a question for Dave. This is just for Dave, though. No one else can answer. Dave, what's your diploid number?
46.
46? What's your haploid number? Wrong. The rest of us are 46 and 23. You are 48 and 24. No, I'm kidding. You're 46 and 23. Right. That's the human ploidy right there. Diploid 46, haploid 23. All right, there's only one or two questions on that. Make sure you know the 4 main tissue types. Oh, you guys remember that? Man, we are going way back. Let me draw something on the board that I drew for you maybe once or twice. Okay, so we said you had to know the monomers of these guys. We already talked about the monomers of these guys. Lipids don't have monomers. We already said you had to know a whole bunch of the organelles and what they do. There's tons of these organelles. There's more than just whatever I drew there. And now I'm telling you, you have to know the 4 primary tissue types. You remember what they are?
Connective.
Okay, connective tissue, nervous tissue, muscle tissue. We're missing the easy one. Epithelial tissue. Those are the 4 primary tissue types. You got to know that. Ooh, that's kind of specific. Remember how in the skin chapter, I covered the production of vitamin D? And remember how in the skeletal chapter, I covered the production of vitamin D in the skin? Well, you have to know about the production of vitamin D in the skin. It's not as detailed as, the steroid goes to cholecalciferol, floats to the liver and becomes 25-hydroxycholecalciferol, goes to the kidney and becomes 1-alpha 25-dihydroxy. It's not that specific. But it definitely is not as much of an overview as it could be. You got to know about vitamin D production in the skin. You got to know what vitamin D does for homeostasis, calcium homeostasis. So make sure you revisit your vitamin D story. It was in 2 different chapters of our course. Okay, I'm up to the bone system now, the osseous tissue. Tell me about osteoclast, osteoblast, and osteocytes. Who builds bone?
Osteoblast.
Osteoblast. Who breaks down bone? Osteoclast. What's the differentiated mature cell?
Osteocyte.
Osteocyte. What are the 2 hormones that directly affect calcium levels? Calcitonin and? Okay, you got that right. Calcitonin and parathyroid. Now here's the question. Which one raises blood calcium? Parathyroid hormone, PTH. So therefore, calcitonin must lower blood calcium, and it does. Okay, now I'm to joints. No specific joints on here. However, you got to know what the words synarthrosis, amphiarthrosis, synarthrotic, amphiarthrotic, and diarthrotic mean. You definitely have to know what synarthrotic, amphiarthrotic, and diarthrotic mean. And those back in those ones I said there's some directional terms. Well, in the joints there's some terms about joint movement, like flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, circumduction, rotation, opposition. What's opposition? Yes, that's right here. Opposition. The opposable thumb. Opposition. So some terms like that are in the joint questions. Ooh, look at this. No, I already said that. You had to know that. Yeah, they can't all be. Oh, boy.
If ossification questions in there?
I haven't seen one yet. I'll let you know if I see it. I'm actually at the skeletal muscle already. Let me go back through and see if there's any ossification questions. No endochondral and intramembranous ossification questions. Okay, with the muscle tissue, make sure you understand the architecture of a muscle. That means the epimysium, the paramysium, and the endomysium, that connective tissue that divides the muscle up into these, the whole organ, the fascicles, and the cells. Remember that?
Mhm.
Yeah, make sure you know that architecture. So that architecture is on here. What does paramysium surround? What's it called? A paramysium surrounds a fascicle. Yep, paramysium surrounds a fascicle. The neuromuscular junction. There's a couple questions in here about the neuromuscular junction. Well, I see one question. There's one question here about the neuromuscular junction. How a nerve tells a muscle to contract. Uh-oh. So as much as this test, I'm already up to number 53, so I'm over halfway done. As much as this test is really pretty much an overview, this question is kind of specific, and I'm going to read it to you. The following are a list of sequences. The following is a sequence of muscle contraction events. Put them in order. What is the correct sequence of these events? Of course, you don't know the events I listed, but you want to go back and look at the sequence of events of a muscle contraction. All right? How the calcium comes out of the SR and binds the troponin and changes shape and pulls the tropomyosin away from the myosin head binding site, myosin head binding swivels, all that stuff. So revisit that if you forgot. Oh, the three types of muscles are in here. The fast twitch fatigable, the fast twitch fatigue resistant, and the slow twitch. You guys remember those? The fast twitch fatigable were white fibers because they had hardly any myoglobin, and they're very powerful, but they get tired real quick and they start making lactic acid real quick. The fast twitch fatigue resistant are still powerful, but they're pink because they have a little bit of myoglobin and they actually are fatigue resistant. They can do some aerobic metabolism. And then the slow twitch are, they're marathon muscles, but they're not very powerful. They don't generate a lot of force, but they're fatigue resistant. They don't get tired. So the three types of muscles relative to fast twitch and slow twitch. Okay, with the blood chapter, make sure you know what formed elements are in plasma. Formed elements in plasma. Wow. That's specific. I already printed this out. I'm not changing it now. You see if your book covers it. I need my eyes. Where's my eyes? While I'm looking this up, let me ask you guys a question. How much blood do you have in your body?
A lot. About 5 liters.
How much?
5 liters.
Yeah, 3 to 6 liters, depending if you're male or female. Like in here, it says 5 to 6 liters if you're male. It actually says 4 to 5 liters if you're female, but the smaller female would be even less than that. Who has a higher CREP?
Male.
Male.
Yeah, male's got a higher CREP. Okay, it's in here. Here's what you need to know. On page 656, it says this. We can estimate blood volume in liters for an individual of either sex by using 7% of your body weight. But your body weight has to be expressed in kilograms. So if you weigh 100 kilograms, then you have 7 liters of blood. By the way, 100 kilograms is a big person. It's a 220-pound person. So, I mean, I'm using 100 because it's easy math in my head. But a 100-kilogram person, a 220-pound person will have 7 liters of blood. Unfortunately.